Yes, sir. Your tape on biblical church versus liberalism was very helpful to me. I'm wondering if you couldn't maybe, like we're talking, draw some lines, give some specifics. Personally, I was won to Christ in an ecumenical endeavor, and they funneled me back into a non-Bible believing church where they conducted seances and every other thing you can think of. Can you give some guidelines on this thing today of maintaining community of the believers, no matter what denomination, but this ecumenical situation whereby you've got Catholic priests that are claiming to be born again, and we're quoting them, and our major evangelistic type leaders seem to not make any distinction. Doesn't this give a vague message to the world? And my question is how far should we go in cooperation with those that take an open stand against God's Word?
Well, I would have started at a different place in my answer until your last sentence. But with your last sentence, I would say that those who take an open stand, see if I'm quoting you rightly now, an open stand against God's Word, we can't have any cooperation with religiously, though we could on marching in front of an abortion clinic, for example. But if you hadn't added the last sentence, I would just say we must recognize that the world is in flux, and the Roman Catholic Church is the best, by far, the best example. Since Vatican II, the Roman Catholic Church is not monolithic anymore. It is broken up into three wings, and I would say the revolution that has come in the Roman Catholic Church since Vatican II is in some ways greater than the Russian Revolution in the midst of history. Before the Vatican II, the Roman Catholic Church was considered to be a monolithic mentality and voice. Since Vatican II, you now have three groups of people in the Roman Catholic Church, which must not be confused. You have the old line Roman Catholics who have all the same weaknesses that were there at the end of the Middle Ages and therefore demanded the Reformation. You have, on the other extent, men like Hans Kung and Rahner and so on, who are really liberals in their theology, and they believe the same thing that Protestant liberals believe. You have, on the other hand, a group of people in the Roman Catholic Church who have read the Bible, because before Vatican II, Roman Catholics were not supposed to read the Bible. For instance, when we were in Valais, the peasants there had so been instilled with this mentality that they wouldn't even touch a Bible. That is no longer true. After Vatican II, Roman Catholics can read the Bible. And if people read the Bible, some people are going to be saved. So inside the Roman Catholic Church, you have charismatic and non-charismatic people who are Christians. Now, in dealing then with Roman Catholics, you have to deal with the realization that there are these three branches, being careful not to confuse the liberals with the born-again Christians, as some people have done unhappily, and recognize that on certain things, in certain areas, therefore, you're going to, or at certain times, you're going to meet Roman Catholics who are real Christians. And you just have to take this into account. Now, I would just say that we ought to see that there is a hierarchy. Now, all truth is truth, and there's no secondary truth taught in the Bible. All truth is truth. But there's a hierarchy of truth as well, and that is people can believe the central things with us, as I mentioned about the distinctives in the denominations. They can believe the central things and yet at the same time differ with us on secondary points. And that would be true between the differences between a Baptist and Presbyterian, Lutheran, and so on. So what I think what we have to do is ask, what is the issue? What are we talking about? If I'm talking about building a church, I would only be able to work with those who agree with the distinctives as well as the central things. If I am dealing with the larger questions, there ought to be some way in which the conservative Roman Catholics and the conservative Jews would stand with us against the liberals in our own ranks. There ought to be some way. even if we didn't think they were saved. And then when you come down further into the civil questions we're facing now, such as, I say, marching in front of an abortion clinic, I think we ought to be able to work with people as a co-belligerent who really we would not differ with on other issues. So I don't think I could get, there would be no one, I think anybody who would try to answer your question by a simple formula would be really would be not helping you. I think you have to judge each individual thing as you come to it and ask, what level am I working on and who can I work with on that level? But obviously, if you were directed to a church that had seances and so forth, the thing to do is run. And at this point, some of you know what I've stressed for many years, the difference between being a co-belligerent and an ally. An ally is a person who I can go a long way down the road with. If we're beginning a church, for example, and he's a Lutheran, he has his Lutheran view of sacraments. I have my own, the Presbyterian, or you think a Baptist. And you might not be able to build a church together, but you go a long way down the road together. A co-belligerent, on the other hand, is a person you don't agree with, and so that you're going to go a long way down the road totally at all. But, say, a Jewish conservative or a Roman Catholic conservative. But having said this, nevertheless, when we're fighting for our lives, we must realize we must not be sectarian. The chasm is not at the point of our denominational distinctives. That is not where the chasm is. The chasm is among the Bible-believing Christians versus the non-Bible-believing Christians. And then we practice our distinctives because we believe they're right on this side of the chasm. But the chasm is not the distinctives. We should be co-belligerents with anybody who's fighting the same battles we're fighting in the larger areas in the midst of our poor culture and our poor country that's being beaten to pieces.